Hi, thanks for finding my channel. My name's Dr. Steve Simpson and I work as a mind coach. And I've got another of one of Aesop's stories for you because I like these stories because they make our minds work. And the more we use our minds, guess what? The more powerful they just might become. So here's a story and then I'll give you my take on it to start the discussion. And of course, I'll be fascinated by what you think because we're all going to draw very, very different conclusions from the same fairly simple story. So this is how it goes. Once upon a time in a small village, there was a part of this village that was the mice were being terrorized by a vicious cat. Now we all know that cats kill mice and eat them, but this particular cat killed as many mice as it possibly couldn't, even far more than it could possibly eat. And the mice's lives were being completely ruined and blighted by this cat. So they called a special general meeting one day of all the most senior mice in the neighborhood, and they turned up to this meeting and the debate raged on and on for hours, and they were really getting nowhere until one of the wiser elder statesmen stood up on his hind legs and said, "I have got a suggestion. I think it would be a great idea if we could get somebody to put a collar and a bell around the cat's neck so that whenever the cat was near us, we would hear the bell ringing and we could scurry back into our mouse holes until the cat moved on." And his suggestion was greeted with long applause. And everybody was immediately feeling very much happier that they'd found a solution. And as the applause died down, an even older and wiser mouse put his hand up metaphorically and said, "I have a comment and then a question. First of all, I think it's a great idea and it will make our lives so much better for us and our families. But my question is a very simple one. Which mouse is going to put the collar and the bell around the cat?" Now this question was met with stunned silence and there was no answer, and I guess there didn't need to be, because we've all been in situations like that before. We've sat in on meetings when people come up with the most brilliant suggestions, but never any thought for who's the poor person at the end of the chain of command who's actually going to have to do this dirty work. How many military meetings, how many meetings of politicians, how many meetings of statesmen and others and civic leaders, and you name it, have made decisions without thought to how these things are going to be implemented. In my previous life, I used to run and manage hospitals around the world, often in challenging locations. And without fail, the first thing that I would consider when we were setting up a new project was who are going to be the receptionists and who are going to be the cleaners and how their work and responsibilities are going to be organized. And the other people that I worked with, I think many of them thought that I'd got things completely the wrong way round. And some of the doctors in particular felt that they were being excluded because they considered themselves to be the most senior people in the hospital. And if you look at it in amounts of money that were paid, they were. And I'm sure they are in many hospitals around the world, although these things do change in different countries. But there are hierarchies in everything. And when I was at school, I remember reading this book, Animal Farm by George Orwell. The animals took over the farm, and it all started off as all animals are equal. And then as the story progressed, this expression got changed to all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. And so it doesn't matter how hard we try and avoid a hierarchical, pyramidal organization structure in the way that we live as social animals, it always seems to be there. The closest I got to was when I worked in a mental institution. It was called a Therapeutic Community. And the concept there was that we were all equal and we didn't have job titles or name badges, and we were all the same, whether we were an inmate or a doctor or a nurse or a social worker or a cleaner or whatever. But it didn't take me very long to twig that it was actually quite easy to spot the hierarchy. There was always the same person who spoke at the end of the meeting and who everybody nodded their head and agreed with. There were always some people who had their own coffee mugs rather than the communal ones. They were staff for sure. And there were some people who had keys and the other ones didn't. So there was a hierarchy, and I don't suppose any of us will ever get rid of that in any shape or form. But getting back to the doctors and my concerns more about the receptionists and the cleaners, the doctor said, why are you giving these people your focus? Why do you invite them to your management meetings? And I said, it's very simple. First of all, because if they do their job properly, your job is going to be a lot easier. If people have a bad experience when they check in at the reception desk, they're going to take that feeling with you to your consultation, and you're going to find it much more difficult than it need be. And the other thing is, and this is a cliche, I know, but you only have one chance to make a first impression. And another part of my job was evaluating other hospitals and medical institutions, and my approach would always be the same. I would turn up on a Monday morning when I knew it would be busy, and I'd just sit in the waiting room. And I'd sit for as long as was necessary for me to get an idea of how this place worked. And usually it would only be a few minutes. Sometimes it could be as long as an hour, but I don't remember ever sitting there longer than an hour, because I could see everything that was going on. I made myself pretty invisible. I could hear the conversations the staff were having. I could see when they turned up for work and who was late and who wasn't. I could see who engaged with the patients and went that extra mile to make them, feel that their problems were being listened to and comfortable. And all the rest of it. And I visited the toilets and I checked out how clean were they. Because if a hospital can't keep its toilets clean, do you really want to be in their operating theatre? I think not. So you can learn so much. You don't need to be a doctor to learn this stuff. Anybody can learn so much in an hour if you just sit down and see what's going on. So that's why the receptionists and the cleaners were important. I couldn't get their salaries up to the same level as the doctors, but I did what I could. I got them nice uniforms. I got them the best working conditions that I could. I made sure that they were involved in the recognition program, so that they could get supplements to their salary and their photograph on the wall, all those kind of things. So there you are. And I think that people in car factories, enlightened management, do the same. Before they make any changes to the design of a car, they talk to the people on the track who are going to be putting the stuff together. They'll know whether it's going to be a good idea or not. So that's food for thought from Aesop, and a few of my experiences in life, and you'll have had your own, which I'm sure actually are going to be much more interesting than mine. But as I said, we have to start somewhere. So thanks again for finding the channel. There'll be more titles coming shortly. I always welcome suggestions, by the way. Always happy to have new content on the show. So goodbye for now.